Where will the next great ancient treasure discovery take place? In a country thousands of miles away or somewhere in your hometown? We can never be sure because we don't know where our ancestors buried their treasures. They left some fabulous things behind for us to find, though, so let's take a look at some of the best of them. Let's begin with the Daurus Horde. It was found in Daurus, County Offaly, Ireland during the 1820s. We can't be any more precise than during the 1820s because the discovery was made by farm laborers and wasn't immediately reported to authorities, and detailed records weren't kept. There are just over 200 artifacts in the Horde, all of which can be dated to the Bronze Age. Rather than being deposited as a single hoard, experts think that the artifacts were thrown into a lake one at a time as ritual deposits, probably made for religious reasons. The discovery of the Horde is so important in terms of our understanding of prehistory in Ireland that the late Bronze Age period in the country is now known as the Daurus phase. The changing complexity and sophistication of the artifacts in the Horde show the progression of Irish bronzesmiths and metalworkers as they become more adept at working with sheet metal and casting over hundreds of years. It was once thought that ironworking skills of this magnitude reached Britain from the Hallstatt culture, but didn't make it to Ireland until around 2,600 years ago. But the artifacts in the Daurus Horde prove that to be untrue. There's a similar degree of confusion about the Bharati Amphora. We know that it's made of silver, but experts can't agree about where it comes from. The most likely candidate is thought to be Antioch, which is now part of Antakya in Turkey. The stunning amphora is considered to be a masterpiece and was crafted towards the end of the 4th century. It was found by chance in 1968 when it got caught in a fishing net close to the harbor of Bharati in Tuscany, Italy. The anchor of the same fishing boat that found it, unfortunately, dealt the precious object some damage, but the National Archaeological Museum of Florence was able to repair and restore it. Considering the fact that it spent more than 1,600 years in the sea, it's in incredibly good condition. The silver used in its construction is exceptionally pure, with no trace of gold. There are exactly 132 oval medallions on the surface of the Bharati Amphora, but experts have no idea how they were added to it because there are no visible signs of welding. Recent X-rays have offered no new clues. Next up, we have the Lydian Horde, also known as the Karen treasure. The 363-item hoard was assembled around 2,700 years ago and was found in the Usak province in western Turkey. The entire collection once belonged to the New York Metropolitan Museum of Art in the USA, but the institution was forced to return the artifacts to Turkey in 1993 after a court found that the museum should have known the goods were stolen when it purchased them. The history of the hoard is a little shady. It was found in 1966 when 3 treasure hunters illegally used dynamite to break open a tomb in Gure village. They looted everything inside the tomb and sold all the artifacts through the black market, making more than $1 million in the process. The residents of the village say that opening the tomb unleashed a curse, and that all 3 of the treasure hunters passed away in mysterious circumstances not long after. We can't find any evidence to support that claim. Whatever its true history might be, the controversial hoard is now on display back in Turkey at the Usak Museum of Archaeology. Now we have a discovery that was still breaking news when this video was made. In November 2022, archaeologists scoured an area of Kleinbasel, which is close to Basel in Switzerland, ahead of a planned pipe-laying work. When they did, they discovered a whole 15 graves dating back to the medieval era. The graves were undisturbed until the team found them, so they still contained their original grave goods. That's how this beautiful gold brooch was found. According to the team responsible for the discovery, it would once have been used as a robe clasp and should technically be called a fibula. Scientists can tell us that the woman who occupied the grave it was found within was around 20 years old when she was laid to rest, and that she lived during the 7th century. When the brooch was new, it was decorated with studded garnet and glass in various shades of blue and green. Many of the studs are missing now, but the fact that they were ever there at all suggests that she was a woman of elevated social status. You'll no doubt have seen a processional cross before if you're interested in beautiful and valuable objects, but you'll likely never have seen one like the Cross of Lothar. Don't feel bad about that. Neither have most archaeologists. The cross is a confusing artifact. The jeweled cross can reliably be said to have been made somewhere close to the end of the 10th century, but its base was added around 400 years later. Scientific analysis of its composition confirms that it was made in Germany and most probably comes from Cologne or somewhere close to it. It's thought to be one of the most outstanding pieces of goldsmith work from Germany's medieval era and is hailed within the country as an important monument of imperial ideology. The name Lothar Cross comes from a large rock crystal seal close to the base of the object, which carries the name and impression of Lothar II, King of Lotharingia. The connection between the king and the cross is unknown, as he'd been dead for around a century by the time it was made. Although it's a museum piece, it's still very occasionally used in processions in Aachen Cathedral today. Let's make a short trip from Germany to Switzerland so we can look at the Shafasenonyx. This ancient cameo is recognized as one of the most important hardstone carvings of the Augustan era, which means it's more than 2,000 years old. However, it hasn't always looked like it does today. A craftsperson of the 13th century decided that the onyx needed some embellishment, so it was given a new gold and silver setting along with an additional medallion on its reverse. Nobody can be sure who the goddess represented in high relief on the oval is, but the best guess of historians are either Felicitas or Pax Augusta. The latter goddess was a symbol of peace during the Roman era, whereas the former represented good fortune. It's highly likely that in its original form, the Shafasenonyx was worn as a brooch. There are faint traces of the fitting for such an attachment still visible on the back of its gemstone. The earliest known owner of the artifact was Frederick II, a Holy Roman Emperor of the 12th century. But it was already 1,000 years old by the time he owned it, and its history prior to then is unknown. The Wickham Market Hoard is so named because it was found in Wickham Market, which isn't actually a market. It's a village in Suffolk, England. And in 2008, an amateur metal detectorist named Michael Dark found the treasure hoard while scouring the fields of the village with a metal detector. The hoard comprises 840 Iron Age gold coins known as staters. The oldest of the coins can be reliably dated to the year 40 BCE, whereas the most recently minted can be dated to the year 15. It's the largest hoard of British Iron Age gold coins ever discovered in a single location, and proved to be a profitable discovery for Michael when Ipswich Museum bought the collection off him in 2011 for £316,000. Historians in England aren't sure why the coin collection was buried, but it's obvious that it was done deliberately. That might mean that it's a votive hoard, but it could also have been a communal hoard designed to cover the financial needs of a whole community of people who once lived here. That begs the question of why nobody ever dug it up again, which we don't have an answer for. Let's stick to the theme of treasure hoards. To be more specific, let's look at the Thornberry Hoard. Just like the last treasure collection that we looked at, the Thornberry Hoard is made up entirely of coins. There are 11,460 of them in total, all of which are made of copper alloy and date back to the Romano-British era of the United Kingdom. Most of the coins are Numi or radiates and were minted between the years 260 and 348. Rather than being discovered at a well-known archaeological site or during a scheduled archaeological dig, the coins were found in the back garden of a man named Ken Allen in Thornbury, South Gloucestershire, as he dug a pond in 2004. All of the coins were in an enormous, elaborately decorated pot. Ken had to call on the help of a friend just to lift the heavy pot, which they then took to the Bristol City Museum and Art Gallery. The museum went on to formally acquire the hoard, which was valued at £40,000 at an inquest. Ken was paid a generous finder's fee. The Hidden Sea treasure is another of history's great treasure collections. It's the largest and most valuable collection of Viking jewelry ever discovered in Germany. And it was found on the tiny island of Hidden Sea in 1873. It's thought to have been manufactured during the 10th century and might even have belonged to the family of Harald Bluetooth, the legendary Danish king. Losing this treasure collection must have been a huge blow to the family, and the loss appears to have happened at sea. It wasn't found until it was washed up on Neuendorf Beach after a storm, where it was recovered by local fishermen. Aside from its importance from a historical perspective, the collection's also notable because it contains some of the finest examples of ancient Scandinavian goldsmithery. While history often writes the Vikings off as violent, marauding savages, the existence of treasures like these reminds us that they were also highly capable artisans and enjoyed a rich cultural life. They might have conquered and pillaged, but they also crafted and traded. All 16 items that made up the treasure are now displayed at the Strassland Museum of Cultural History. The ultimate dream of most metal detectorists is to find a giant lump of solid gold. That dream came true for Kevin Hillier in Victoria, Australia in September 1980 when he discovered the nugget now known as the Hand of Faith. It's the largest gold nugget ever found by a metal detector. The hefty chunk of hand-shaped gold, which weighs 875 troy ounces, was hiding just 12 inches below the surface of the soil in a field in Victoria's Kongauer district, resting in an upright position. Kevin cashed in on his discovery immediately and placed the nugget up for auction, where it was bought by the Golden Nugget Casino Hotel of Las Vegas, Nevada for $1 million. Adjusting for inflation, that's equivalent to $4.3 million today. The Hand of Faith remains on public display in the same Las Vegas hotel today. Although larger gold nuggets were discovered during the Victorian gold rush, they were found inside mines. Finding one like this out in the open is a once-in-a-lifetime event. So Kevin probably spent the rest of his life thanking his lucky stars. Sometimes you have to search high and low to find treasure. Other times it literally falls out of the sky and lands at your feet. All you have to do is dodge the falling rock and lava to pick them up. When the Hawaiian volcano Kilauea erupted in 2018, ash and rock weren't the only things it spewed out onto Hawaii's Big Island. It also started raining gems. Thousands of pea-sized minerals known as olivine were blasted into the air when Kilauea blew its top, landing in the form of lumps known as peridot. It's thought the crystals were formed when magma from the volcano was fired into the air by the explosion, where the magnesium icon silicates in the lava reacted with other elements to create olivine. Sadly, nobody on the island got rich on the back of this discovery. When there are gemstones literally everywhere you look, nobody needs to go out and buy them. Okay, sure, this technically isn't a treasure discovery in the sense that the gems weren't made by our ancient ancestors, but it's still the kind of once-in-a-lifetime event that's worth hearing about, and that's why we've included it. Our final discovery is the metal detector find of a lifetime. It's called the Crosby Garrett helmet, and it was found by an anonymous amateur metal detectorist near the town of Crosby Garrett in Cumbria, England, in May of 2010. The finder was immediately aware that he'd potentially found something unique, but it wasn't until experts were called that it was identified as a copper alloy Roman cavalry helmet dated to approximately 2,300 years ago. Based on its design, its function might have been ceremonial rather than military, and the design appears to more closely resemble the traditions of the Trojans than the ancient Romans. That's not necessarily a surprise, though. The Romans copied many Trojan traditions within their cavalry tournaments. Controversially, the helmet was sold into the hands of a private collector for $3.6 million 6 months after it was found. As it isn't made of precious metal, its discovery wasn't covered by the British Treasure Act, and so the sale couldn't be prevented. Fortunately, the owner has allowed it to be displayed occasionally at exhibitions. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, and you will be the first to know when a new video comes out. Thank you for watching. and see you in the next video.